Hello. If you clicked on this, it means you're either currently withdrawing from benzos, thinking about withdrawing from benzos, wondering if you should be taking benzos, etc., etc. It's all about the benzos. The fact that I am in bed and shirtless is due to unrelated medical conditions, but this is my story of my own benzo experience and fight. Now, a lot of you were just following doctor's orders. You told your doctor you had anxiety, or maybe you didn't even do that much. He just thought it would be a good idea to give you these pills. And the next thing you know, you got a benzo problem. You realize that, well, if I don't take these pills, I feel like really sick. And benzo withdrawal. Let me put you this way. I had a heroin addict who said he had a habit in the hundreds of dollars tell me, outside of a dentist's office, don't fuck with that shit. Because I told him I took Xanax, to get through the dental appointment. He's like, man, don't fuck with that shit. He said, I had a such and such dollar a day heroin habit, and I mess with Xanax, and heroin is easier to quit. Okay, those are not encouraging words. I understand this. But there is a way out of this. And that's the first thing you need to do is to find a doctor that understands benzodiazepines and knows the name Heather Ashton. My doctor didn't even know that name. That's like the pioneer in getting people off of benzos. She had a clinic. This is going way back to the 80s, but the medical community does not handle benzodiazepines well, and that is the understatement of the year. But my story is I wasn't like that. Doctor didn't dump that shit on me. I like downs. Period. Never would. I was always afraid of any kind of possibly addictive substance, because there's chemical dependence, and then there's addiction, and they make easy bedfellows. But I was always afraid. I've seen too many people get taken down by meth, crack, heroin. It's like, that's not going to be me. So occasionally I would come across downs, or I would get them prescribed for me, and I enjoyed downs. So, about 5 years ago, both my parents died in the same year. And I was having trouble sleeping, I think even before that. And I had somebody that I knew that was getting prescribed Xanax, but they didn't like to take them in the morning because it made them sleepy. So they would give me some here and there. Okay, the indication on Xanax is 2 to 4 weeks. You don't take it every day for more than 2 to 4 weeks due to the risk of chemical dependency. Now, gradually, I started getting more and more of them, and one day I didn't have any, and I felt really fucking weird. I can't help the profanity. There's going to be some swearing in this video. It's the way it is. So I was crawling out of my skin, and I couldn't figure out why or what was going on, and they're my people. I called them up, and I said, man, I feel really weird, man. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I don't know what the hell's wrong with me. See, I had so little experience with drugs, not a drug guy. Just because I like downs, and I would take them occasionally. I never touched crack, cocaine, heroin, anything heavy, anything with the possibility of addiction or physical dependence. Never mess with that stuff. But I called these people up and I'm freaking out, you know. And then my aunt sends over a couple of Xanax, and I feel a little better. And then I'm like, uh-oh. Then I knew. Then I understood. And by that time it was too late. I was just ignorant, you know. I thought I was just taking another downer. I didn't know what a benzodiazepine was. So that's the beginning of my story. And we're going to stick to it, the benzo part of it. So her doctor, I'm still getting them off of her, but I'm maintaining. I'm getting like, she can get them in strips. I get like a 10 strip off her and pay her like $20 for them or whatever. Sometimes 10. Sometimes she'd give them to me for free. It all just depended if she needed money or not. Most of the times she didn't even have to ask. I would just give her the money just because, you know, I'm that type of dude. That's, you know, fair. So, at some point they cut her off, which means they cut me off. Okay? And, hello, cold turkey. You know, so I'm freaking out. I go in and talk to my doctor about it. And I'm so naive and stupid that I bring in an illegally acquired pill. I'm like, this is what helps my anxiety. And my doctor's like, whoa, he didn't even want to touch that. As far as he's concerned, that never happened. Because, you know, doctors, that's an illegal activity accepting somebody else's prescription. But I want to tell them, you know, want to be upfront and honest. It's like, this is what, you know, will help my anxiety. You know, and he's like, no, I'm not prescribing those for you, because some people get to where they think they need it. Totally inaccurate. It's a physical dependence. That's why I didn't know. There was no thinking there at all when I was like, what the hell's happening to me? I didn't, you know, I never had experienced anything like that. It wasn't like, oh, I need Xanax. You know, oh boy, I can't wait to take my next Xanax. You know, like when I see, I'm a tobacco addict. So, you know, when I see somebody smoke, I want a cigarette. When I'm around people smoking, I want a cigarette. I don't smoke. I mean, if I stay to myself, you know, but it's really hard for me to be around people who are smoking. That's addiction. It's hard for me to watch people on TV that are smoking. That's addiction. So this was, thinking had nothing to do with it because I didn't even know what was happening. I was just like, my body was reacting. You know, this is not going to be a technical video. I'm not going to go into the mechanics of the physical dependence and how it works. You don't need, you know, you can get that from somebody else. But, so he's like, no. You know, I asked him like twice and he was like, no. And then he's prescribed me like the lowest dose possible of Ativan. And, you know, I just grit my teeth all day and I'd be suffering. And I'd wait and I'd take that Ativan, which is another benzodiazepine. So it's scratching the same itch, but it's like I got poison ivy and I'm just doing this. You know, it was miserable. So I got to the point where, okay, it's like the doctor won't give it to me, and I was trying to buy it off the street. Sometimes I was successful, sometimes I wasn't. Um, 'Cause I had a certain amount of connections, and you know, I'm going through hell with this stuff. It's like it was like a whole roller coaster, and finally, you know, I'm like, I got a heart condition, so that was just ridiculous anyway, because if you are new to me, maybe you don't know this, but there are two types of cold turkey withdrawal that can kill healthy people, and that is alcohol or benzodiazepines. And I already got a heart condition, so I'm lucky to be even talking to you. A lot of people do not survive the whole benzo experience. They just don't, they die. Usually because of, I don't want to be too grim, but usually because of suicidal ideation and just the hopelessness of it and the suffering involved. So I go to the emergency room because I'm like, look, I tell them it's a heart thing, just because it gets you in there quicker. And then they did the thing, and they said, well, your heart's fine. And I'm like, no, I'm not fine. It's an anxiety thing. It's I'm not fine. And they moved me into a room where there was like nothing I could grab and freak out with. It was almost like a rubber room. There was no equipment in it at all. It was very weird. But once, they discerned it wasn't a heart thing, they took me there. My whole point of going in there was the score. So I scored what my 15 1 milligram pills, which will hold me, for like a month. Hold me for like a month. Easy. And he says, I'm just an ER doctor. I can't prescribe you any more than that. And I had to emote, not cry. I wasn't crying and shit, but I was like, just look at, because I had a lot of surgeries and stuff. I'm just like, just look at me. It's like I got a lot going on. I was convincing. So once I was able to get that ER doctor to prescribe, that kind of like broke the seal with my primary caregiver, and then he started prescribing. The problem was he didn't know who Heather Ashton was. He doesn't know anything about benzodiazepines. He doesn't apparently know that the indication for him is between 2 to 4 weeks as far as taking them every day, because of the risk of physical dependence. So he gives me 30 pills a month, and take one a night at bedtime as a sleep aid. It's on the bottle, more or less. So I'm taking one every day, sinking that hook in deeper, And he, I talked to people on the internet then, and I found out, right away, Heather Ashton's name comes up right away. Valium, right away. You need to get yourself another doctor, and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't pursue another doctor. I got other circumstances we won't go into that kept me from doing that. I stayed with that guy, but I couldn't trust that guy, because the guy thought of me as a drug addict. I made that mistake of bringing in an illegal pill and showing it to him and saying, this is what I've been taking. Honesty, not always the best policy. So, I freaked him out. So I'm like, I'm not rocking the boat. I'm barely surviving here. I'm not rocking the boat and asking this guy for Valium. Because I read the Ashton manual, and they taper you off of the heavier benzo. The two heaviest ones are Klonopin and Xanax, and they taper you on to a lesser benzo, usually Valium. So I was like, I'm not asking this guy for Valium, So I start buying it off of the street, and it's very hard to score it up. Very hard for me to get any off of the street in any quantity, and you have to have a steady supply of it to switch from Xanax to Valium, because all that does, if you have like 15 5 milligram Valium, which I have in my chart, which is below there, is you take up the volume, use up the volume, and you go right back into the deep end of the pool. You know, you have to have that step down. And so I'm dealing with a doctor that doesn't even know the name Heather Ashton, that I cannot trust, that arbitrarily lowers or raises my doses, you know, and like I'm terrified to death, you know, after watching videos on here that I'm just going to get dropped off, because there's people that are like one and done. Here's your last bottle, good luck, slap you on the butt, send you on your way. You know, and I've already had experienced cold turkey, and I knew that I already have compromised health, hence me laying in bed shirtless. And I knew, you know, shit could kill me. So, not good for my anxiety, not good for my psyche. So like, I was like, I just don't want to rock the boat. I just don't want to rock the boat. So it took me, um, so I'm just kind of going along, and I'm getting these prescriptions for 30 half-milligram Xanax and taking them every month. And then I have, like, in 2017, I had something like catastrophic happen of a personal nature, and I started taking more, and I ran myself short. And when I ran myself short, his response to that is not when I went in there and I was in cold turkey and in bad shape. His response to that, instead of like giving me another bottle of 30 and saying, you have to be more careful this time, or maybe you should seek some psychological help to help you with this, was to give me more. Instead of giving me 30 pills, to give me 60 pills, sinking that hook in even deeper. So, you know, that happened, and so he got me to where I was used to having 60 for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, and then dropped me back down to 30 with no warning. So I think it's called tolerance withdrawal. But, you know, I was used to more, and now I have to take less. So it's like I got thrown into involuntary withdrawal. Not a word, not a warning, not a discussion, not nothing. I'm in the elevator, I'm looking at the script, and it says 30 instead of 60 as I'm going down, going to the outside to get in the car. And I'm like, this could be bad. I had no idea how bad. 2 weeks in bed, I lost 12 pounds, barely moved, and could only eat like these tubes of yogurt. It was bad. It's not, you know, everybody's an individual, so if you are planning to withdraw or whatever, it might not be that way for you. You know, it might not be that bad. I'm not a chubby guy, to say the least. So 12 pounds, massive amount of weight to lose in 2 weeks. That's just how bad it was. It was so bad that anything would irritate me, to the point where I was watching old NBA basketball games on the computer, laying in bed with the sound down almost to nothing, or staring at a plant and trying to do some self-hypnosis. Lucky for me, I had experienced a lot of things. You know, this happened to me when I was 49 or 50 years old, somewhere around there. So I was able to have that experience to fall back on. In other words, you get some pretty weird symptoms when you're going through even tolerance withdrawal, where you still have a little bit of the stuff, but it's not what you're used to. So, I had one day where I looked at my hand and I wasn't sure whose hand it was. I'm talking about that kind of stuff. That's called depersonalization. And so I realized that I got to get off of this stuff. This is in March of 2018. We're almost in 2020. But that was when I first was like, I had made plans before then that I wanted to get off of it just from watching YouTube videos and other people's experience with it. I'm like, this is bad shit. But it was bad timing for me because I had oral surgery planned. So this guy decides to just arbitrarily throw me into tolerance withdrawal when I have oral surgery coming up. So I was like able to survive until I got to that oral surgery in April of 2018. And then, I can't, withdrawal is bad news. So I can't go travel to another city, go to a strange place, go through the trauma of oral surgery and withdrawal. So I had a little tiny stockpile of pills by suffering extra much that I had prepared myself for that possibility. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do this in the state I'm in. I've got to have some Xanax to take to get me through that. I got to have a little tiny few extra pills. So I take those extra pills, and then I'm trying to taper back down. And what they call that, kindling. I experienced kindling, which just like them extra pills was just like poking the poker into the fireplace and getting the fire started all over again. So whatever progress I had made up to that point, I lost, and I had to start from scratch. I was Sisyphus rolling that boulder back up the hill once again. It rolled all the way back down. So at some point, I was like, I start writing this stuff down. It's like I gotta write down what I'm taking, when I'm taking it, because this has been going on for a long time, and I need to get a sense of if I'm making any progress. So that's how the chart below developed. So involuntary, forced tolerance withdrawal started around March 18th. The chart started May 1st of 2018. And Lord, I did not know the roller coaster I was going to be in for as far as my living circumstances and how we're going to stay away from that, though. How things were going to go down as far as the rest of my life. But I did read in the Heather Ashton manual that, you have to be ready and prepared. You need support. You need a stable environment. I had none of these things, So my chances for success, even as I fought, and I fought I'm going to tone my language down here. I fought like a son of a bitch. Even as I fought, I didn't realize I was swimming up the Niagara River. It's just it's just, it was like a hopeless quest due to the place that I live and the circumstances surrounding me. So if you are planning to quit, if this is your first time seeing me, You got to have that. You got to have a stable environment, and you got to have support, and you got to have a sane life. I mean, you still should probably try to quit. I mean, those sound that not many people have that anyway. But I'm talking about like at least being a stone's throw of a sane life or stable environment, or at least have people that will understand that you're going through something profound and difficult, and that you know you're not quite going to be yourself, to put it mildly. At some point, there were so many things going wrong that I just threw up my hands and I'm like, I give up. I'm done. And that's sort of what motivated me to make this video, is to break out the chart, to figure out what happened and why I was done, you know. But I did manage to switch from Xanax, which the reason why Xanax is the worst of them all, in my opinion. Klonopin is just as powerful, but it stays in your system longer. But that's the reason why I think Xanax is the worst benzo of all, which is the one, of course, that I got. Nothing but the best for me. As withdrawal can start 6 to 12 hours after your last dose. I mean, it happens fast. And that's why you want to step down with Valium, because Valium stays in your system longer. And that's why when I was scoring Valium illegally off the street, I was able to go 50 hours sometimes between Xanax, because I was popping these little tiny doses, sometimes 2.5 milligrams of Valium, which is nothing, just something to take the edge off, as they say, But the pills themselves were 5 milligrams, which is also a low dose. But finally, in December of 2018, all the way from March to December, which is about 10 months or so, I found somebody that had heard of Heather Ashton and that was willing to prescribe me Valium, and that was willing to help me get off of Xanax. And so they prescribed me Valium. That's reflected in the chart. You take the Xanax and Valium at the same time. This hand is the Xanax. This hand is the Valium. You slowly drop the Xanax, and you raise the Valium until the Xanax, you don't take it anymore. And then you lower the Valium. And that's how you get off of it. And we had a whole plan worked out, but I don't, like I said, I'm not going to go into my personal circumstances. I don't want anybody to be turned off by how long this video is. But the chart will reflect that. I will record the things that happened in written form in the various months that exacerbated the situation, that made withdrawing harder, until I had some serious relapse issues. And then, like I said, I found somebody, and now I just take Valium, which is a much better benzo to take. But the problem is, it's like I've been on benzos now for a long time. I can't get off of them as long as I'm living in this building, which the chart will explain why. But written form, I can be a little briefer. This is a half an hour, and it's long enough. That is my benzo story. I don't want anybody to be turned off by the length of the video. But there's, of course, a whole lot more to it than that. And I wish you luck and good fortune if you do try to quit. And it's going to be a ride. and it's not going to be a pleasant ride. It's going to be rougher for some people than for other people if you are thinking about quitting. But they're very bad for your brain, and also the medical community does not handle it well. They could drop you off at any time and plunge you into a withdrawal that scares heroin addicts. So I would recommend giving it a shot. Just find a doctor who knows Heather Ashton, who understands that you just don't drop people off at benzos, and that you got to take them to lower benzos, and it's got to be a controlled process, a careful process. Benzos are very, very dangerous. Find a doctor like that if you don't have one. That's your first thing you got to do. And then the second thing you got to do is you got to have a little support of some kind. You're going to have some problems dealing with people that are like, you're like a different person now, you know. You're going to have some personal issues. It's just part of the package. It's just the way it goes. But you only need like one supportive person. So, you know, just as long as you have like one supportive person that understands that you're not yourself, you're going through something very difficult and a real struggle, and you need like a stable, safe environment to successfully withdraw. And that's how it happened to me. You could say in my case it's my own damn fault. In most people's cases, I think doctors put them on the stuff. And there's so little understanding of benzodiazepines in the general medical community that I wish you luck finding a doctor that gets it, you know, honestly. Because that is how most people end up in the benzo trap, is they are ushered there by a trusted physician, and doctors are supposed to know what they're doing. If it wasn't for people on YouTube making videos like this one warning me, I would have never thought about it, quitting, you know. But it does over a long period of time. Like, you can hear it in my speech right now. There's pauses, there's gaps. It's bad for you, man. Yeah, I wish you the best of luck. I'm really sorry that I'm sorry for myself that I did not know about benzodiazepines. So now anytime anybody brings up prescription drugs, I bring up benzodiazepines and tell people how dangerous they are. Because if somebody would have told me, I would never touch this stuff. The same way I would have never touched heroin. You know, the same way I never have touched heroin, crack, meth, bath salts, whatever. You know, if somebody would have told me about the dependency issues with benzos, never would have touched it. But I didn't know what I was taking. I was in a bad psychological state and an ignorant fool. And there's a lot of y'all that are seeing me for the first time, or maybe not seeing me for the first time, or maybe you're very familiar with me, that's not how it was for you, that you got thrown into this mess by a doctor. And for that, they should be ashamed. The medical community should be ashamed of itself, but they don't ever admit the wrongdoing. There's actually class action lawsuits, I believe, coming up. They have benzo awareness days, so people are figuring this stuff out. You know, Valium's been around at least since the 50s. Xanax since right around 1980. Stuff's been around a long time, so it's done a lot of damage and hurt a lot of people. And a lot of it is the medical community's fault. But again, the video's too long. I don't want to scare people away. I wish you the best of luck in your fight against benzos. And I hope that someday you can wake up and be free of them. God bless, or good fortune, whichever you prefer. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.